Yeah, welcome back to Ask Dan Anything, and it's got kind of a special one for you today. It's a story. It's not really a question, but it's a story that I'll give some feedback on because I resonate with it so strongly, coming from a background of being a nice guy with suppressed emotion, especially anger and rage. So this is from Phil. I want to share his story. He says, I was driving. The car behind me got impatient and started beeping and tailgating me. We've all experienced this. Phil got enraged. He rolls down his windows and yells, "What?" and gives him the finger. The guy keeps tailgating him, so he pulled over, got out of the car. Sure enough, the other guy gets out as well. He said, "Do you have a problem?" I didn't like his tone. It reminded me of the time when I went to high school. I wasn't going to let him push me around. I said, "Why do you have to beep and follow me?" He said, "You should have been patient." I said, "Are you in a rush?" He just kept repeating himself. "Do you have a problem? Do you have a problem?" Interesting point just on a side note here where Phil says, it reminded me of the time I went to high school. That might seem like it comes out of nowhere, but that makes a lot of sense for me, and we'll dig into that soon. Phil continues, I was actually wishing he would swing at me so I'd have an excuse to fight him. I was seeing a friend at 3 p.m, so to get rid of him, I lied and said, "My dad's in hospital." And his eyes twitched. He didn't like that he felt he had to apologise, but he did and shook my hand. shook my hand. So Phil's made up a lie here to get rid of the guy and kind of make him feel guilty. Phil continues, on my way back I was beating myself up for bitching out on such a weak excuse. I was more concerned about how I'd look in front of others and wanted to prove him wrong by showing he's not so tough, more than I wanted to express myself honestly. I was kind of mad he didn't get physical first, so I had a legit reason to pour out all the years of anger and hurt I'd bottled up on him. I'm disappointed in myself for how I handled the situation. So Phil, I want to thank you for sharing that with me and giving me permission to talk about it here. First and foremost, right at the end you say you're disappointed for how you handled this situation, the regret coming through there. Think of that as the helpful source of learning. If you didn't regret this, if you didn't feel disappointed in yourself, you wouldn't explore it any further and learn anything from it. And yet I think this situation is a fantastic learning experience. There's so much going on in here that represents the nice guy syndrome so much. What happens when we repress our rage in order to try and be nice and make everyone feel happy? What can happen? I mean, this could have gone so badly. These are kind of situations that end in murder. Because somebody has been holding something in and some random person just as the final straw on their back and they take it all out on that person. I used to work with a lot of murderers, and so often the person they murdered wasn't even the source of their pain. They were just the one who happened to provoke them at the time when they couldn't take any more of their inner rage. So many murderers have only murder on their conviction history. There's no other crimes. That's about half of them. Because they weren't criminals, they were just somebody who held in their rage and their anger and then one day snapped. So what we can see here is that misplaced rage. Phil's been holding something in for a long time, and there's this desire when we do that to hurt others. We want other people to experience pain so that the universe seems fair. We want others to feel wrong and feel guilty and feel suffering and hurt. Because we think that we've had an overdose of it. We think we're overrepresented in the suffering spectrum, don't we? It's a nice guy syndrome thing. We think that everybody else has it easier than us. And so when others suffer, we secretly celebrate that. We're like, good, it's about time someone else had a turn. And when somebody makes us suffer even more, we direct that and target that at them. We're like, it's your turn to hurt. Because now you've added even more to my already unfair helping of pain. And we do this thing in these situations that I call eating the poison. We can see ourselves building up, escalating the situation, having our tantrum, what Dr. Robert Glover calls having a puke, like all that rage boiling up and coming out of us. And we have to actually fight our rational resistance to allow this to happen. We're also simultaneously having clear thoughts like, there's no need to get outraged about this isn't a big deal. I can just move on, I can deal with this, blah, blah, blah. We have to fight against it and be like, no, this is unfair. What Or like a child who works themselves into a rage. They have to actually work at it because they can clearly see evidence that this isn't worthy of that kind of reaction. So we eat this poison, we build up. You can see, as Phil described the story, he was kind of building himself up, like winding up his own key at the back, trying to get it as enraged as possible, while simultaneously not wanting to do that. And the way we do it, the way we wind ourselves up, is by taking it personally. We take somebody else's behaviour and we go, that's an attack on me, don't we? You notice how we do that? It's really interesting. We go, there's somebody else, quite clearly somebody who can't manage their own emotions and they just happen to be taking it out on me. Or they're not even taking it out on me, but I'm just choosing to get in their path and take it. It's so obviously not about me. It's their whole life has led up to them behaving this way, which had nothing to do with me. And yet I'm going to decide it is about me, that they are deliberately, maliciously attacking me. We do this when we take criticism or feedback personally. We say, they said that to hurt me. They're trying to harm me. And yet it's so irrational to think that. It's very rare for someone to actually engage in an act where they're trying to cause harm. They usually think they're doing something good, don't they? And you know that because you do the same thing. When you beep at someone or tailgate them or flash your lights, you're not like, I'm going to try and ruin this person's day. You're like, they've done wrong and I need to teach them. Which is no doubt what the other guy was thinking. So we suppress our empathy in these moments. In order to take something personally, we have to dehumanize the other person, don't we? We have to look at them and say, this isn't another human being suffering in the same sort of way I am, and they're just lashing out in the same sort of way I do. They're an alien species who's a threat to me. They're somebody who, they're a psychopathic force that's come to harm my life. This is the universe's unfairness represented in a person. It's like Agent Smith in The Matrix. This is the Matrix targeting me and bullying me and treating everyone else better than it treats me. And you can see how we just funnel our rage into this person who doesn't deserve it. They're just somebody lashing out in pain. We could completely ignore them and go on with our lives. They're not actually a genuine threat. This is different to, say, someone pointing a gun at your head, in which case being enraged would be very helpful. You could blast through them. But somebody just having a tantrum that you could ignore and get on with your day, obviously we have to take it personally to make it personal. Does that make sense? What this means, I think the big learning in this really, is that when we get reactive to others, it means it's time for self-compassion. It's a warning. What we can see in this situation, which, you actually handled pretty well. Despite the amount of outrage, you managed to get out of the situation without hurting anybody, or without putting yourself in more danger than you did. But what the situation is telling you is that you've got a lot of pain that you haven't dealt with. You've got a lot of pain that requires some compassion, some sympathy, some healing. This guy just happened to be the catalyst to bring it out of you, but that was already there long before this guy showed up. He was just the final straw that broke your back that day. And so, when I have moments like this, when I have a tantrum or a puke, where somebody's minor action causes me to just fucking lose my shit, it tells me I've allowed myself to build up this unhealthy thing here. And it's time for me to take care of myself. I'm in need of some healing and support from me, and maybe from others if I need it. So you can actually appreciate this guy that you wanted to fight. He helped you. As bizarre as it may sound, most real help hurts. That's the best kind of help. The help that feels good is usually pretty ineffective. In his outrage, he helped you see your own. And you were both, interestingly, probably having the exact same experience as each other. He had his final outrage moment, you had yours final outrage moment. You just happened to meet at the same time. This is where the biggest disasters happen, where two people puke at the same time. And he actually helped you to see that there's some self-compassion work that needs to be done. You have to ask yourself, what would need to happen for me to be so happy with myself and calm and relaxed about life that the next time something like this happened, I'd just be like, let him go. What would need to happen for you? What work would you need to do on yourself to get to that place? So I'd suggest that this is simply a moment where your darkness was revealed because you couldn't hold it back anymore. You couldn't resist the temptation any further. And this guy's helped you see that. And so your next step is to ask yourself, well, what would it mean to engage in self-compassion? I obviously need it. What would that look like? I just made recently, before this video, I made another video on living by the value of compassion. I'll try and link that below so that you can have a look at that. And anybody else here who feels that they seem to like ruin relationships or lose jobs or cause fights or just have these big tantrums that are totally above and beyond what the actual situation was, understand you've been shown that you've been suppressing rage. You're not dealing with anger properly. You're not dealing with frustration, bitterness, resentment, disappointment, all those emotions. You're not dealing with them properly. They're bottling up and then they're being spilled when somebody triggers you. And it's time for you to start taking care of yourself, to start being more honest about these emotions when they first come up rather than holding them down. Go and be angry with the people that you need to be angry with instead of taking that on strangers. Vent your frustration, express yourself, and these moments will happen less and less. So I hope that was helpful. If you enjoyed that, subscribe to the YouTube channel, send your questions through to dan@brojo.co.nz. Get out there and express your darkness so that it doesn't bubble up inside you, and I'll see you guys next time for the next Ask Dan Anything.